My dear friends, the session is now over. We will now move to the conclusive session. We are a bit late on the planning. Really sorry for that, but I guess the exchange were really of interest on this intangible heritage part. I will let the floor now to my colleague Damien, that will facilitate the concluding session. Damien, floor is now yours.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, Paolo, Giovanni, and Ramon for the very interesting session. We are now entering the concluding part of this conference. And to do so, we will have two speakers from the EU institutions sharing their thoughts about the conference that, as far as I understood, they have been following since the very first minute, and even far before that. Catherine Magnant, Head of Unit, Cultural Policy, European Commission at the DG for Education, Culture, Youth and Sport. Catherine has been as well in charge of the task force for the 2018 European Year for Cultural Heritage. Welcome, Catherine. And Brice de Schietere, Head of Division Integrated Approach for Security and Peace at the European External Action Service. Hello, Brice, are you with us?
Yes, hello, just Avola. I could not start the video before, now I can start the video. Hello, Damien, thank you.
Thank you very much, welcome. I will first start with giving maybe a few wrap-up or let's say takeaway points at the request of Guillaume from the various sessions we went through. We'll try to do this quickly. First, thanking all of you on behalf of Culture Solutions to have been able to facilitate together with Guillaume all these fascinating debates. Culture Solutions is a social innovation group focusing and specialized in EU international cultural relations. And we were very happy to be able to contribute to have this space for dialogue and exchange since yesterday. So I'll have very quickly 10 very fast points to share with you. And these are very subjective takeaways that are combined with some of the notes that Sophie and Maël from ECDPM have taken since yesterday. They will also be in charge of writing a report. So based on the idea that there is political will for action for results from the European Union that was expressed yesterday morning, here are my 10 takeaways that I'd like to share with you. First, at the center, we heard that communities are the epicenter of any vibration or any energy that should be put into cultural heritage protection initiatives. Communities composed of various categories, youth or women or different genders, but also communities of practice and communities of expertise. The second idea that I found very interesting is the notion of cultural spaces, both tangible and intangible, and it also has a governance dimension. A third idea is the idea of transformation of shared memories because of conflict, but also transformation over time. We're preparing for the future. What are shared memories? Who shares what? What is universal? What is specific? The fourth notion that was central was partnerships between organizations, partnerships between civilian and security experts, and so on. 5, economy and jobs. Without this incentive, but also objective, we would lose a large part of the picture, but also environment and climate change. We heard a lot about the nexus between culture and environment and climate. Multidisciplinary approaches, we cannot do it alone. The EU will not be able to do it alone. And I'm sorry, Catherine and Brice, if I'm already overlapping on some points you will make, but if we repeat them, I think it's not going to harm anyone. Multidisciplinary also in the sense that we have to cross expertise from all our fields. We are all specialists, but sometimes we need to hear and work with other specialists. Which leads to the question, and that's my 8th point, of knowledge, data, analysis. It can be conflict analysis, it can be digital data, it can be understanding the local politics, and it can be about using digital tools, but there's certainly a need for investment there. The 9th idea is related to external communications. Let's get the right narratives. Let's not dramatize or exacerbate conflict with simplistic narratives. And the last point is about EU action itself, because at the end of the day, the question is, how are we going to do it as the EU? We're going to do it if we are coordinated, if there is leadership, both from Brussels, but also on the local level, when we implement programs. And we also probably will succeed if we involve, that was one point made in the chat, if we involve famous figures who are respected people in the field of cultural heritage in Europe, but also anywhere in the world. Preaching by example and working together with famous figures is often very effective. I will stop there. These are my takeaways. Thanks, Sophie and Maëlle, and thanks, Catherine and Brice, for your patience. And please do emphasize or repeat some points. I think, again, you know, it's important to hammer the nail as much as necessary sometimes. Catherine, over to you, and thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Damien. No, it was a really great way of concluding and great takeaway. So, yes, I will repeat some of the things you said. I mean, first, congratulations to you and Guillaume and the EEAS for the conference. You've said it. I followed the whole conference as much as I could, but I could not, disconnect myself because the discussion were fascinating. It's been an inspiring moment, and the proof is that people want to continue dialoguing and exchanging. So really well done. It was a first for the EEAS, and it's a great success. Now, I want to build on what you said regarding the takeaways of this conference, in order to highlight how many of those issues that were brought forward by our speakers today, and yesterday, are similar to the issues regarding cultural heritage that we deal with within the EU. You said it. I was the head of the task force for the European Year of Cultural Heritage. That was back in 2018. And we had civil society. I've seen many comments by Snezka from Europa Nostra, who was a great, pillar of the European Year. This European Year was for the EU mainly, and a few neighboring countries. But so many of the issues that we dealt with, or the lessons we learned, are echoing what was said today. And let me start by the slogan of the year, which was the past is our future. And that has been said, this morning. The holistic approach, at the end of the year, in order to capture all the lessons that we learned, we issued a document which is called European Framework for Actions on Cultural Heritage. And it has 4 principles. And the very first principles that we want to follow in all our EU actions on cultural heritage is the holistic approach, meaning that you cannot distinguish tangible heritage from intangible heritage. Cultural heritage has to be considered together with natural heritage, as you were saying, as many speakers were saying. So this holistic approach, and you have to add nowadays digital heritage. Either the digitized heritage or the born and digitally heritage, which is, all the creations and everything which is done now digitally, which will become tomorrow's heritage. So we must maintain and have a holistic approach. They don't make sense one without the other. The mainstreaming of policies, cultural heritage policies cannot be conceived in isolation. we are now working together on external relation issues, but that the same is true of the regional policies in the EU, of the social policies in the EU, etc. The research, we have to integrate heritage in all those policies. Then the partnerships. We cannot succeed in cultural heritage policies if we do it alone. We have to work with local communities, civil societies, international organizations, of course, you know, united as well as EU member states and EU institutions. So that's why one of our principles as well that we derived from the European Year was participatory governance. It's a more, you know, technocratic way of saying involving local communities and involving people. People have to decide what is their heritage. That's the only way that in which you can ensure a sustainable preservation of heritage for future communities. And then, and I will finish the comparison here with the European Year of Cultural Heritage. Discussions were so intense, the work was so passionate, and we had so much going on that we wanted to keep that momentum. And we created an expert group, which allows us to regularly continue discussions, and it gathers civil society, a very wide range of civil society actors. Europa Nostra was here with us today, but we also have associations, for example, dealing with landscape, of course, architects, but also landscape issues, because we have this holistic approach. Then we have all the international organizations, Council of Europe, ICOMOS, ICROM, of course, and UNESCO, and our member states and us EU institutions. So that's what we did, and I will be delighted to invite you to one of our next sessions so you can report on this conference, because our focus is more within EU. Now, let me go back to my few conclusion points and take away. I'm aware I've got to share the floor also with Brice, who I'm sure has also a lot to say. But what I wanted also to say are two things. First, my emotion with this conference today. Why? Because I've been in the field of cultural policies at EU level for such a long time that I remember back in 2012 how difficult it was to have this dimension of culture and cultural heritage in external relations. It was almost, you know, people were looking at us when we were mentioning that as if really we had almost lost our minds. You know, I mean, this was culture. I mean, not serious stuff to be incorporated in external relations. And I still remember my boss back in 2012 started an experimental group on China and how we could, in our relations with China, have more of a cultural dimension. And I remember the resistances, I remember the lack of trust, etc. But we kept working and we kept, you know, soldiering on. And look at the results. Look at the results now. Of course, the turning point was 2016, and the key person was the High Representative Federica Mogherini, who really believes in the power, the transformative power of culture. And thanks to her, we were able together, so my services, DG EAC, the Commission, Education and Culture, and the EEAS, we were able to put together this communication, the very first ever communication on external cultural relations, which really is a foundation for everything we're discussing today. And it really was moving for me to see that even nowadays in CSDP missions, you have cultural heritage mentioned. I mean, in 4 years, it really is a lot of ground covered. So I really wanted to highlight that, because some of our participants don't realize that maybe that, you know, until a few years ago, this was a no man's land. I mean, the culture in external relations, there were a few projects, but no strategic approach and less political will than now. And finally, illicit trafficking of cultural heritage. I will finish with that. I could, you know, I mean, I could highlight many issues, but in a few days, next week, the 14th, it's actually tomorrow. It's actually tomorrow. Tomorrow will be the first international day devoted to the illicit trafficking of cultural goods. So maybe to finish on that, let's all celebrate, let's all take action. And I will just want to tell you what we do, education and culture, so that my department, when it comes to illicit trafficking of cultural goods. We have several projects with UNESCO, and one of them was to one of them was to sensitize the art markets in Europe, because without buyers, you don't have sellers, right? So it's absolutely important that we work here also in Europe. We have very important art markets in many of the EU member states, art market of antiquities. And let's face it, that's an issue that has to be addressed by us here as well. And another, we are also at the moment funding a project with UNESCO on illicit trafficking in the Western Balkans, which is very promising. And the final point, a platform that we are funding called NetShare, which is still operating, and some participants to the meeting, to the conference, were mentioning the desire to remain connected. Well, maybe have a look at this platform entitled NetShare. It gathers 220 experts working on those questions from 17 countries. It has many, many references and activities on illicit trafficking of cultural goods. So maybe that's one place that you can visit and contribute, you know, enriching with all the wisdom that we've heard during those 2 days. With that, I am finished. And I just want to finish by saying that you can rely on us to share our expertise, our time, our passion for heritage with you in the external field, so that we can indeed try and, you know, protect heritage for the sake and with the will of local communities and the future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I think perhaps Guillaume will say it, but you will also speak next week at a conference on cultural heritage and multilateralism, if I'm not mistaken. And thank you also for pointing at the work that has been done in the past by all Commission services. You today were representing DG EEAS, but we know that together with you, there are all other Commission services involved on our topics, and we look forward as well to continuing the conversation with them. Brice, from the EEAS perspective, what are your takeaways and what can you tell us about next steps?
Thank you very much, Damien, and thank you, Catherine, also for having, I would say, introduced the conclusions. I mean, the first remark I would do, and I think everybody is doing, is to note that the very large participation of this conference makes it a success. I want to thank really all the attendants over those 2 days for your attention, for the very numerous questions and comments that were put. The activity, I think, of the private chat on this conference was unprecedented of all what we could have seen before. And I want also to thank all the panelists for the quality of the exchanges, the vast mobilization of competencies on the theme that we have seen, and which evidently played an important role. And to highlight also, Damien and Guillaume, your excellent work as moderators. I think your handling of this event really was very professional, very appreciated, and certainly contributed very, very much to the success of the event. As was mentioned before, it was the first time that the EEAS is organizing a conference of this scale on this topic. So I'd like maybe to start with a few observations, just 3 quick remarks or takeaways. First point, this conference definitely demonstrated what we had as a precept to introduce it, that on the one hand, cultural heritage has been identified as a driver of conflict for long, but that on the other hand, the protection of cultural heritage can be and is a key component for peace, security, and development. And here the second remark I would do from an EU perspective, and building on the intervention of Director Stefano Tomat yesterday, is that also this conference is in this respect an important marker for our reflection on what we can do more, and notably has confirmed that we must look at cultural heritage within the spirit of the integrated approach. So that's how we work in the EEAS. Others mentioned the importance of holistic approach. I think all those are basically leading to the same understanding, which is that we need effectively to have a framework for a more coherent, a more holistic engagement to external conflicts and crises, where cultural heritage plays a part of the objective to promote human security. The third remark in terms of implications is that effectively we want to reserve a larger place for cultural heritage, not just for the EU, but also for all actors of peace building. And it must be put in a more strategic framework. And I think many panelists have stressed the fact that we need effectively to always keep a human-centered approach when looking at cultural heritage. And in this respect, I think all the discussions that we have had showing, I would say, the centrality of the cultural heritage in the nexus of security, development, environment, and also with the cultural nexus and sustainable peace is one of the lessons. And we've heard many interventions stressing the indispensable central role also of cultural heritage and also of the local communities. This morning, in this respect, I found interesting some of the comments that were done on the psychology and the emotions, post-conflict, the importance of healing, and how effectively the human factor is central. We've seen the importance of an approach combining what was called the cultural spaces, as we heard, so the tangible, intangible dimension, placing the human being at the center of the action. So, I mean, clearly, I would say a term is it's not stone reconstruction strategy, but it's fundamentally human. So the second aspect I want to highlight is how can we operationalize all that in our actions. And we need to look at cultural heritage in a preventive way. We've mentioned a lot conflict prevention, mediation during those discussions, and also in a more comprehensive way in addressing conflicts, and seek to include the protection of cultural heritage in all of our instruments. And for us, for the EU, I would say in all of our EU toolbox. And I think the conference showed also that a lot has been done already by many partners. It was very impressive, I think, to listen to panelists explaining concrete projects on the ground, sharing also the expertise that they have gathered through the whole conflict cycle. And we need to draw lessons from this diversity of experience. I just noted, but of course this list is not necessarily comprehensive, but I found very interesting to hear what was said about Aleppo in Syria, to listen to the examples of the mediation dialogue in the case of Iraq, the projects taken by Ali, FICOM, UNESCO, safeguarding measures, be it in MENA, the Balkans, and also this morning on the Cash for Work project in Yemen from the UNESCO, and so on and so forth. So many good examples. And on the EU side, as was also mentioned, we've done some work already by integrating cultural heritage in our concept on mediation. This was mentioned by Director Stefano Tomat yesterday. And also, as was mentioned by a few panelists in our CSDP missions, starting with Iraq. Now, the stake for us as EEAS is actually to develop on concrete next steps. And we are very pleased to have the support of our member states for continuing the development, not only of a dedicated EU concept on the protection of cultural heritage, and to work further on how we can effectively integrate cultural heritage in the EU toolbox on conflict prevention, on stabilization, on peace building, basically on the whole conflict cycle. And I think in this respect, the outcome of this conference for us will help with the drafting process of such a concept, and that we will coordinate, obviously, with our colleagues in Commission services and consult with the member states later on. We aim actually to be ready already for discussions with our member states in the context of the Political and Security Committee in the spring 2021. I also want to announce, because I think the comment was made, that we need to work also with people who are engaged on the ground. And we are also mobilizing the instrument of Civil Society Dialogue Network, which is managed by EPLO, to also conduct a series of dedicated consultations in the time to come. This conference was for us a step in helping with discussion and reflections. I think it's also good to hear that Germany effectively will organize its own conference next week. A number of us will participate there. We will continue those discussions, and I know that there are other events in preparation, notably in the spring. I think, Ramon, you mentioned that in Spain, in Toledo, where we will also have a follow-up. So once again, thank you very much to all the panelists for their contributions, for the guidance, and to all the participants. And over to you, Damien, for the very final word. Thank you.
Thank you, Brice. Before giving the floor to Guillaume for the concluding remarks, again, thanks for your trust on behalf of Culture Solutions. We've been at the beginning of this journey on EU international cultural relations as well, and we're ready to continue more than ever. So you can also count on us. As well as engagement with other participants who have expressed their interest in this topic, either if they discovered it or if they knew it already. And thanks, Guillaume, for your trust. You've been the orchestra director of all this, and it was a great pleasure to collaborate with you. So we'll be happy to listen to your final words.
Merci. Thank you. Thank you very much, Damien, for these final words. Allow me to take the traditional formula of excellences. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, we have now reached the end of this international conference. I guess we had amazing debates and perspective. The European Union is and will be busy reflecting on our engagement in cultural heritage, and has noticed in the conclusion done by Brice and Catherine a few minutes ago, we would have many channels to keep alive the momentum. We already received an amount of comments, and I just want to share the essence with you, saying that in these times we're going through, and we know how culture is at risk and in danger, it was inspiring to hear these words of hope to build a future together. As Brice said, on behalf of the European External Action Service, thanks to all of you for attending these events. Our gratitude to all the speakers that share with us their expertise and draw some perspective for action for the European Union and international institutions. I also want to express special thanks to the organization team that really make this event a real success. Damien Helly that co-facilitated the conference with me, but also our support team that made an amazing job. Miguel Varela, Therese Lynch, Sophie Desmith, and Mel Salsinger. Thanks a lot. Special thanks to my colleagues Karine Borel and Antje Herberg from the External Action Service for their continuous support. And thanks to all of our colleagues from all the European Union institutions, the member states and partner organizations that trust us and that made this conference possible. On our official website, www.eucultural.com, you would have the opportunity to continue the discussion, to find the links to the YouTube channel of our partner ECDPM, in which you might replay the session that we have during these 2 days. The immediate coming next steps on the field, as it was mentioned, the conference organized by our colleagues and friends of the German Foreign Office Minister on the 16th and 18th November, online on cultural heritage and multilateralism. Allow me to end this event to paraphrase Dostoevsky. Not only beauty will save the world, but our common action and our engagement for peace will. And the rich discussion we had today will be of tremendous importance to place cultural heritage as a true and solid component for development, peace, and security around the world. Take care of yourselves and of your beloved ones, and see you soon.